All right. So yeah, so we talked about in part one, we talked about the defects of the conditioned soul and the material world, and then we talked about the whole concept of soul, that the soul cannot be burnt, it or cannot die, right? Generally, you cannot annihilate the soul. Soul sits in the body or uses body as a tool to um, propagate from one lifetime to another lifetime, right? And then in part, so that was part one mostly, and then in part two we talked a lot about karma and the karmic theory, the principles of karma, vikarma, akarma, all that we talked about. We also talked about the 9 stages of bhakti, how you can proceed from faith to the last stage of the bhakti, that is the prema, Krishna prema, right? We talked about that also. Now, in part three today, we'll be talking about the 3 modes of material nature here. So, I am sure you all of you know that there are three in the 14th chapter of Bhagavad Gita basically talks about the modes of material nature, right? So, goodness, passion, and ignorance. And when the eternal living entity comes in contact with nature, uh, Krishna is telling Arjuna that he becomes conditioned by these 3 modes, that right? Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, the 3 modes with that, right? So let's go over these modes. The Sattva um, mode of goodness is called as the mode in Sattva, and it is basically relative purity, self-satisfaction, and conditioned by sense of happiness. So in general, this mode is nothing but it's the mode where people are contented and happy. That right, they're in this state of bliss most of the time during the day, and nothing really affects them. Right, they're usually in a pretty happy mood most of the time with that. Right, so that is the mode of goodness. Their achar and vyavahar, what we call it in Hindi or Sanskrit, is like their behavior. If somebody talks to them in a negative way, or somebody criticizes them, they're okay. I mean, they won't take it to their heart personally, and they know how to, respond to um, these fluctuations in other people's mood in a balanced state with that, right? So they're able to handle these negative remarks of others in a more contented and compassionate way with that, right? So that's a mode of sattva or mode of goodness. Then we have the rajas, a mode of passion, unlimited desires and hankering, bound to fruitive activity, pride, constant sense gratification, intense endeavor, and great attachment. So greed develops basically. So work, 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 work. Somebody's workaholic is basically mode of passion with that, right? So they have a lot of desires, and they're bound to the fruit of activity because you you work hard, you get the reward, right? So they were constantly seeking the rewards for their actions that they're doing with that, right? And because of that, of course, as if somebody it's the general principle, right? The more you work harder, majority of the times, you do get the results, right? With that, if you keep at it, keep persisting, and you continue working hard with that, right? So when people do this, as they get rewarded each time, their they're feeding their ego, and that leads to the sense of pride with that, right? And in order now and then once this becomes like a cycle, that when people start getting more proud or they have this sense of feeling of pride, then what happens is they are constantly seeking sense gratification. Oh, look how successful I am. So because I worked so hard, I've earned this much money, I've gotten these many accolades or rewards, or my reputation is so high. People are inviting me to here and there and across the world, and so that fame comes with that, right? And as people get fame, they become proud, and then they're seeking that constant sense gratification again and again with that, right? So And then with this hard work and endeavor, they have this attachment, right? Of course, it's hard for them to let go with that. And you've you must have seen like people who have constantly worked under this frame or under this mode throughout their life, even at the end stage of their life, they are still very attached, right, to money or fame with that, right? So I'm sure everybody has seen an example like that in their family or friends or somewhere, right? Or even in general society with that. We definitely see that. And that's basically eventually causes the greed, right? That there's hankering and constant hankering that, oh, I need to do this. So I get this report and I feed my ego and pride with that. So that is the mode of passion or rajas. The last one is the tamas or mode of ignorance. This is the destruction, delusion, fear, darkness, moroseness. Indolence is the most common word that is used. Indolence means laziness with that. So people who are in this mode are very like typically lazy with that, right? And so you'll see that, oh, there's no sense of enthusiasm for us, like for these people to, to do anything, like, and they're like constantly in this they're in the mode of ignorance. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
Prabhu.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Vatsala Mataji, I think it's on your end. My mic is fixed. Yeah. Okay. I think if you can rejoin it, okay, you can try rejoin. Okay. Yes. So then, yeah. So this is like indolence or like basically laziness, right? With that, and then with this the illusion develops. So with illusion basically it is like this is this is the reality, right? Oh, I'm happy, I'm just going to eat, drink, do not so much work, and just sleep with that, right? And so this is basically a false illusion or a reality that develops with that for someone who is in this mode of ignorance. Now there are a lot of, so Bhagavad Gita is really awesome in terms of, right, it gives us the principles to live our life with that, right? And so that's why when as devotees or people who are coming in Krishna consciousness, there are these food behaviors or food habits that we try to avoid that cause us to remain in mode of passion and remain in mode of ignorance with that, right? And someone give an example of this. Which foods you think cause mode of ignorance?
Meat eating, garlic, onion.
Yes, onion garlic is more in the mode of passion. Then
Okay. Okay.
meat eating definitely is in the mode of ignorance with that, right? Yeah. Yeah. So scientifically also speaking, like human body is not designed to eat meat, right? We're designed to eat more fruits and vegetables, plants, right? And that plant-based diet and that. And so when like the animal products sit in our stomach for a while, it takes a long time for the body to decompose it or disintegrate it and then digest it, that right? And so it causes a lot of inflammation. And while these foods are sitting in the body, with that, uh, it basically causes this laziness feeling because generally when there's you must have also realized like if you eat good food, generally sattvic food, but it is also very good. And you eat a lot of it. Like I know at Vyas Puja, there was amazing food. 2 days, and then like we ate a lot of it, and then you're like, okay, you don't feel like doing anything, right? With that, you feel lazy with that. So the same thing happens here with these when you eat a lot of meat because it is not getting digested so quickly. Unlike plant-based diet, it causes the inflammation, and you're basically it's sitting in your gastrointestinal tract, in the stomach, in the intestine, and it becomes a challenge for the body to digest it, and eventually it causes this feelings of indolence or laziness, right? So rajas, as you mentioned, is in the onion and garlic with that, right? So that is typically or spices, like very spicy food, is also in the mode of passion with that, right? So that's why when we make our bhoga and offer to the deities, Radha Krishna, we avoid these foods because we want to make sure that our consciousness is in the at least in the mode of sattva guna or goodness with that. There is another higher mode than that is the Shuddha Sattva with that, right? And so, but at least if we are in this Sattva Guna mode, with that mode of goodness, we can do our bhakti properly. We can with that, right? We can chant good rounds, and uh, these foods don't affect our consciousness with that, right? Foods that we eat in the Sattva Guna that have that characteristic of goodness with that. Okay. Another thing that so let me ask a question. Is it bad to have this sattva, rajas, and tamas in general, or do we experience that as a regular day-to-day life? Even in Krishna consciousness, when you're avoiding these foods, still do you experience these modes on a day-to-day basis or not? Even if you're eating sattvic food. Anyone can take a stab.
Yes, I do think that. I do
Go.
think we experience different types of things throughout the day, although we do. But I mean, overall, I think we try to stay in the mode of goodness, but throughout the day, things happen to us, and we might feel it a little bit, of course.
Right. Vatsala Mataji, do you want to add something?
Yes, Prabhu, because throughout the day we are involved in too many activities. Some of them require passion. Because when we do something that we really like gardening or any other work, we work very hard. We want to get a result out of it. So, that is a passion involved. And again, when we are doing the chanting or worshipping Krishna, then it is a little bit of sattva guna is involved. We try to focus on Krishna and Radha and Krishna. And then sometimes when you are sleeping or when you are so tired after doing all that, we do experience, like a dullness, sleepiness. So I guess that is a mode of darkness or.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the different.
Periodically.
Yes. Yeah. So different parts, not parts, different times of the day influence our modes as well, the mode that we are in, right? And so what do people recommend the best time to chant their rounds? Go ahead. Vatsala Mataji.
Oh, Prabhu, see, I try to wake up and try to do it at least by 5 o'clock, but it is very difficult for us.
I know.
I have to assign. Yesterday we had a Vaishnava care meeting. So sometimes we are focusing on that. Sometimes chanting gets delayed or postponed. Anyway, we have to have determination to finish the rounds before 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. So we just try to do that job. So, but it is not easy though.
Yes, it is not easy at all. I know. So that's why. So before, like in the morning, before sunrise, and usually generally in the morning time, Brahmurta is the time of mode of goodness with that, right? Around 10, 11 o'clock is what is the mode of passion is there more based on the cycle of the sun and our day, because that's the time when you're you're going to work if you're working, or I mean, even in the home, if you're a homemaker, you're mostly doing things around the home, right? With that, get your day going with that. So you need passion and some type of drive to complete your day-to-day tasks during that time or your work. And then at night, when we're tired, we go to bed, right? We're sleepy in that sense. So these are the modes of goodness, of course. So, but there is a subtle difference. These modes are basically acting at a physical level, right? As we talked about, okay, you get up, you're in mode of goodness. During the day, you're in passion. At night, you're in mode of ignorance with that. But that's at the physical level. What we are talking about more deeply here is how these modes are affecting our consciousness with that, right? So, so there is a subtle difference with that. So these physically, it is governed by how the cycle of the day or the sun cycle is going with that, right? Sun rises, sun sets with that. So it moves with that. But then at another deeper level, these modes, we want to try to be in the sattva mode or another higher mode, Shuddha sattva with that, because it affects our consciousness with that, right? So that's why we try to eat the foods that help with this, and also our sadachar, our behavior, how with others we need to emulate with that, right? So not getting angry with others, not criticizing others with that. So all those things help are part of this affecting our consciousness come under this mode of goodness with that, right? So, okay. So those are basically the modes of material nature. And then I think we already talked about all these things. The modes are mixed and do not exist in their pure state. One is conditioned by the modes that they have acquired with that, right? So, and because of we are entangled in this material world because of the modes. And so that's why we try to come out of this by chanting holy names, by getting devotee association, by doing temple service, by doing service in your community with that. And so it helps us to eliminate how these modes entangle us in the material nature with that, right? Now, again, when somebody um, um, is too much or all the time in mode of goodness, also it can lead to this feeling of pride, also, right? With that sometimes, and so. Uh, with that, like someone is saying that to you that, oh yeah, you are doing, you're excellent, right? Nothing happens to you. You're balanced with that. Whenever there's a problem, I see you have a cool and calm composure. You can remain balanced and fixed with that. That also can lead to this mode of um, passion from goodness, because then you could all eventually become, have this sense of pride with that over time with that. So that's why this higher mode of Shuddha Sattva, basically, which is in um, one may transcend goodness to attain pure goodness, or Shuddha Sattva, fixed in Krishna consciousness is there, which does not let this sense of pride and ego come in, even with that. And so if we are in this Krishna consciousness, that is basically help us to get to that other level where these modes do not affect us or entangle us in the material world, right? Okay. So one must transcend the modes to attain pure bhakti, but how? One who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and then comes to the level of Brahman with that, right? So I'm not going to read all these, but as we talked about the um, doing activities that are in Krishna consciousness, help us to transcend these modes and allow us to do a pure bhakti with that, right? As we also talked about, eating the right kind of food affects us consciousness. We are what we eat, right? With that, and so that affects our consciousness with that. And so again, I think we've talked about these things. All right. Any questions on the modes of nature? Okay. Now we're going to go to this concept of the absolute truth and the three aspects of absolute truth. And so there are three: the Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagwan. With that, so these are the three aspects of the absolute truth. So we'll go one by one. Brahmeti, or the Brahman, the impersonal Brahman, spirit, glowing effulgence, the greatest all-pervading energy, oneness, impersonal substance of existence, the all-pervading absolute of truth. Let's just go through all of these, and then I'll give some examples, and I'll also ask for your understanding also. We'll come back to that. I just want to read all these three at once. Paramatma is Paramatmeti, the localized Paramatma, super soul, localized expansion, partial representation in every heart and atom in material universe, the inner voice, our best well-wisher, the localized aspect of the absolute. And then Bhagwan is the supreme personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, personal, original, full of all six opulences, wealth, strength, fame, knowledge, renunciation, beauty, the personal aspect of the absolute with that. So, what is Brahman? When I came into Krishna consciousness, this idea of Brahman was very elusive, and I could not understand is like, what is Brahman? Because everybody who I heard, or they were talking about this Brahma Jyoti, like some effulgence or some light that you see. And I was like, I can never see that light. What is this light, right? So, does anybody have wants to talk about what are we talking about with Brahman, and how can we get a more realistic or a practical understanding of Brahman? Vatsala Mataji, let's hear from someone else.
Okay, Prabhu.
I'll come back to you. Anybody else wants to answer?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Satyam Prabhu. Please go ahead.
I'll try, Prabhu.
Sure.
So there is this concept everybody talks about, like some kind of energy. People who do not believe in like the physical form, worshipping the physical form of the God, like they don't want to attribute, and like God cannot have any physical appearance. They also talk about okay, we believe God, but it's like something supernatural power or energy. I mean, that's I think, according to me, that's where it's like the practical thing which people talks about. Anything, something like energy or Shakti, that's like the Brahman feature of the Lord. I mean, and then we can talk about like where this Brahman feature is coming, like from Golok Vrindavan, from Krishna's body. It's like effulging all this light. So that's, to me, is like the impersonal Shakti of the Lord. So
Right, perfect. Yes. Anyone else? Vatsala Mataji?
Prabhu, I have read before I came to Krishna consciousness. I used to read about Ramana Maharishi and other great munis in the South India, other people. I think they have told us about the Brahman aspect of it. You know, they have found this effulgence of Krishna, and they always say you meditate on that, you know, and then you will get the energy, spiritual energy. So I guess it basically comes from Krishna's body, but that is not the real thing. I was also doing some meditation for over 10 years. It's called a Sahaj Marg. They always told us to focus on the heart, and we meditated for 40 minutes. Sometimes you realize something, you know, I mean, you cannot explain the state, but I guess those things always come from Krishna, you know, something, whatever we experience, the effulgence, and the bright light that they explain, it's all coming from.
Yeah. So we hear all this bright light, right? Yeah. And like that's, as both of you rightly mentioned, that, yeah, this is something which is a little elusive or beyond conception, because we cannot, I mean, at least I have not experienced. And so it's hard for us to get grips on it, right? Put something tangible on it, right? That, okay, yeah, what is this? But we see like yogis who have practiced a lot, and like this impersonal effulgence of Brahman that they call it is it's not a personal form of the Lord, like how we go in a temple and we see a deity of Radha and Krishna. It's not a personal form, but it is this concept which is an abstract concept. That, right? There is this light that you can focus. If I meditate and I try to connect myself with the higher, you must have heard a lot of people, especially I've seen a lot of Western devotees who come there. They have mentioned, oh, I'm trying to connect myself with something higher. With that, they have this idea there's something higher exists, but what is that higher? With that, right? And so, of course, in India, in the yogic system, they call this with this Brahma Jyoti, or this higher effulgence, or with the light, right? So that's this Brahman with that, right? Now, one way to practically think about this is what I have heard in some Bhagavad Gita lectures is through so something higher is controlling us, right? Everybody agrees with that, right? And the easiest way of realization that comes with around this, or about this idea that something higher is controlling us, is like like looking at the nature, that, right? How every day the sun rises, every day the sun sets, the moon comes, the moon sets, and then there is light and darkness with that, right? Everything, plants are growing, the seasons are changing from summer to winter to fall to spring, autumn, right? All of those are coming with that. So who is controlling all of this with that, right? Who has made these mountains or rivers and oceans or seas with that, right? So this idea of that something external is there and that's controlling this planet Earth with that, or the universe, that is this Brahman with that, right? Okay, does that make sense? That, right? And so that impersonal form of the Lord, and that something is controlling our day-to-day activities and around us, is the pervading all aspect of this absolute. Is like, yeah, it's there, but I don't know. It's a very cursory realization with that, right? That I don't know which one is it. What is it? Who's controlling it with that, right? That. So that's Brahman. The next one, Paramatma, I think I'm sure most of you have heard of this, is the super soul with that, right? So that's what we call it, is the super soul within your heart, seated in the heart, is your inner voice with that, right? And is basically, if we do something wrong, our inner consciousness tells us, right, that, oh, I did this wrong. I should not have said like this to the other person. I should go and beg pardon from that person, right? The other person with that. And so our inner consciousness tells us, like, oh, maybe I should not have done this. This is how I should have approached this situation. So that's the inner, because Krishna seated in our heart in the form of Paramatma, Super Soul, is guiding us with that, right? And one way to hear. Right, Krishna is always there and seated in our heart, right? But we put a curtain over that, or we close that door, and like we are not able to hear that voice, inner voice with that, right? And the more we connect through chanting and hearing Krishna Katha and associating with devotees and taking initiation, I mean, all these steps basically help us to connect with uh, with the higher self, who is seated in our heart, and we can hear this inner voice with that, right? It has I have experienced this, and a lot of people I've heard is like, oh, you know what, this is what it is. And you eventually, because the inner super soul, the inner voice is guiding you, you then eventually take the right decisions with that, right? So that's the Paramatma seated within the heart. And then the last one is the personal aspect. So there's a form, um, there's an actual deity form, Archa Vigraha, of the Lord, and that is the um, personal form of the Lord, and that is the Bhagwan realization with that aspect of truth, of the absolute truth with that, right? So So there is a form of Krishna that we worship in the temple. There is Gaurnitai, there is Jagannath Baldev Subhadra, right? There's Narsingadev. There is a form, there's Lord Ram with that, right? And so this is the form that we are meditating on and we are worshiping in the temple. So that is the Bhagwan realization with that, right? So go ahead, Vatsala Mataji.
Prabhu, you said a Paramatma, a super soul in your heart. Is this actually the Krishna consciousness state? Are we experiencing Krishna consciousness there?
Well,
When
so
Krishna comes in?
Krishna consciousness is basically if you consciousness is this idea that let's break this down. Krishna consciousness is basically I'm just trying to be aware with that, right? That is consciousness with that. Krishna consciousness meaning that I have the awareness that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and everything that I do in my day, I have to make Krishna the center of those activities. With that, that is Krishna consciousness. Okay, with that, I can be Trump conscious. I can be Biden conscious also. I could be any conscious with that, right? For that matter, right? I'm just giving a joke, like as a to add some sense of humor here, because that way, whoever I'm thinking about, I become conscious of that person with that, right? And so Krishna consciousness means that I am conscious that Krishna is I'm part and parcel of Krishna, and all my activities that I do during the day have Krishna, make Krishna as a part, as a center of those activities, like eating bhoga, doing arti, doing worshiping your deities, chanting, right? And even my behavior with others. And like that's why Guru Maharaj asks us to take this vow during initiation is I would avoid or minimize as much as criticism of other devotees with that, right? Because we need to understand, we talked about in the second module, right? We talked about the concept of soul and body with that, right? And knowing that if somebody is doing something bad, it they are it's their circumstances that's forcing them to do that, right? But in their heart, inside, there is a soul that is a clean, pure soul with that, right? They don't intend to do these uh, inappropriate behaviors or criticize us with that, right? So how do we need to react with that, right? So all these things become our Krishna consciousness. And the more we practice, the more we are able to connect to our super soul, Krishna seated in our heart with that. So do you see the difference between the two?
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you.
Yeah. So another question that comes in this is that like, okay, so we move from this impersonal form to a more personal, to an not more, an actual personal form of the Lord, right? Here, the Bhagwan form with that, right? So impersonal is that Brahman, that some light that's there, and then this is the personal form of Bhagwan with that, right? Why do we need to have this realization with that? And how does it help our chanting or our activities with that? Any thoughts on that? Let me repeat my question. We moved from this realization of Brahman, impersonal form, to a personal form of Bhagwan with that, right? Why do temples have these deities, and how does that help us with our chanting and other activities? Is that right? Has anyone thought of this? Why did Prabhupada make temples which has deities?
Haribol, Prabhu.
Yes, go ahead.
Prabhu, I think it is, if we have the deities installed there, I think I have heard that they put a lot of energy or chakras or inside before they construct the temple and install the deities there. So I think when we are having that kind of positive energy, when you see the Lord, immediately when you can associate with the Lord in a friendly way, there are so many different ways you can associate with the Lord. I think we do immediately feel the positive energy when you go to the temple, when we love Krishna. But I don't think when I am looking at the effulgence, I may not feel the positive energy, or I am not seeing that love that comes out when I see the actual deities in the temple. So I think there is a difference between that. You know,
Yes.
when I was meditating, it was a different story. I just like a wideism, or I cannot feel, the actual figure of Radha and Krishna. I can only
Mhm.
see some kind of, I know it is coming from Krishna, but it is very difficult for me to assert, that is Krishna. So when I look at the form of the Krishna, and it is ordained by acharyas, and they put a lot of positive energy. So that's why when we go to the temple and look at Lord Krishna and Radha or Lord Jagannath, we see the energy coming from them to us. I think that is
Right. Yep.
a
Perfect.
knowledge that we are getting it. I
Yes.
think there's a power in there.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing this. So, as Mataji rightly mentioned, yes, Satyam Prabhu, go ahead.
Sorry, Prabhu. If you allow me, I just want to.
Yes, please, please. I'd love to hear from you. Go ahead.
So I feel like this is like Kali Yuga.
Mhm.
Our senses, our maturity are not at that level. So just there is a proverb we say like distance love doesn't go for long time, right? Eventually, even like in material world, right? So if you think about like two different personalities, people always say like when they are like apart, that love doesn't exist for long. Even we feel like when our parents are long away back in India, we have this like hearing about them. We may not be able to focus or concentrate on them more. So like Krishna is there in Goloka Vrindavan, he is there. We know, but it's his mercy that um, he has in this deity forms. He has given us the opportunity, given us the darshan, at least when you are not in that like very matured state of bhakti, right?
Right. Very nice. Thank you so much for sharing. Yes. So basically, as Prabhupada has given us these deities to worship, is as we are, it's hard for us, as Mataji was also explaining, when you're meditating on this light, right? You're like, okay, how do I know what I'm supposed to feel, right? With that, there has to be some objective measure, right, of that, and of how I get this realization with that. As Prabhu rightly mentioned, our senses are imperfect. We cannot, feel that and perceive that. And so it is a challenging thing to focus on a light or a form that is impersonal with that, right? And in order for us to connect and chant and meditate, it is easy to meditate on the form and get connected and then have good quality rounds or have attentive chanting with that, right? Because you're seeing somebody, now you're focusing on Krishna's clothes, on his flute, on the flowers, on the garland, on the mukut, all these form things that you see in the deity with that, right? And you're charmed with that. And with that, it basically helps you to connect with that, right? And you can then attentively chant and focus on that, right? And so that's the main reason why we need to have this Bhagwan realization with that. Another thing that also is there, an example of if you have to explain this to somebody else, I've read um, and heard is this train analogy. So if you're at a train station, the first thing that comes to our realization that the train is approaching or coming to that station is the sound of the train, right? With that, because sound travels faster than, like, I mean, vision, right? With that we can see. We can't see the train, but we can hear the train with that, right? With that. So that is the uh, impersonal realization or the Brahman with that, right? Then, as the train starts approaching or coming closer, you can start seeing, oh, some form of train, or a bright light is there. There's a train that is coming with that, and some part of the train that you see it with that, right? That is the Paramatma realization with that. And then when the train comes there, you actually see the full train there. That is the Bhagwan realization with that. Okay, does that make sense? That so it's basically these are all the aspects of realization of Krishna with that, but the way we perceive it with that, as we see Krishna, uh, like somebody may just see, oh, some things are happening around my day every day. Sun is rising, sun is setting, seasons are changing, flowers are growing with that, right? So that is something is happening. How much I need to know, how much I need to go deeper in it to perceive it, that how much I need to realize it, that's how it happens with that. I think there is a verse in chapter 4, I have to find that. We just read it recently where it talks about this, how much you realize me with that. Let's just, no, it's not, no, it's going to bother me if I don't find it. So I'm going to, let's go to Veda base and quickly check. If anybody knows, please tell. Chapter 4. As all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everybody follows my path in all aspects, respects, O son of Pritha. This is the verse. Yeah. Ye yatha mam prapadyante tam sathaiva bhajamaham mama vartamanu vartante manusya partha sarvasaha. That. So this is as all surrender to me. So how much we surrender to each form or realization, how that much realization we get. If you only are happy with some sun is setting, sun is coming down, you only are Brahman realization with that, right? With that. Now you see that's what is Krishna telling Arjun in this chapter 4.11. So this is the um, realization, or why this is important with the Bhagwan realization and these three the realizations around the absolute truth. Okay, I hope this is clear with that. Yeah. Okay. So I think we spent enough time on this, so let's keep going. Yep. So all these things here, you can read Satchit Anand compared.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Hare Krishna.
Yes. Go ahead, Mataji.
Sorry, I'm just driving, but I just wanted to say a couple of things
Yes,
regarding
go ahead.
the Brahman thing. Today, I mean, obviously, we're having a discussion with a friend. First of all, people who are not in Krishna consciousness, they believe Krishna is an avatar of Vishnu. And that becomes a bit of a problem. And then, obviously, we have again the Dvaita and Advaita philosophy and Achinta Bheda, the thing. So that, so we were just talking, we were saying about about the Dvaita philosophy, saying that obviously we are not equal to God, or we do not get do not go back to God or join God, and or do not get we do not mingle into God, right? And so we are as a servant for God, we are of eternity. That's what we think all the time. Now, she was trying to say, like, oh, it's just like Christianity. They also do not believe that God is separate and the Father is separate and everything. So I was just thinking, like, is that what Christianity is? I didn't even know about that, first of all. I was thinking, of course, Jesus is not the God. He's the son of the God or a messenger. That's what they say. But about the Brahman thing, Mataji was saying, like, it is the effulgence of Krishna. They do not believe it is Krishna. They think Krishna is actually avatar of Vishnu. They think Vishnu is higher than Krishna because Krishna came down as an avatar, they think. So they think that it is different. So obviously their philosophy is totally different. And then we have the Shiva. They think Shiva is more superior than everybody. The Shaivite thing. And the Devi Bhaktas, they think they believe in energies and Kundalini. They think in that way. So it sounds quite different. So my question was, obviously we read from the Bhagavatam. In the Bhagavatam, we just go with what the Bhagavatam says. So so according to the Brahman, for them, I was thinking Brahman is like, for them as Brahman is obviously some supernatural, does not have any form, as we all of us spoke, no form, nothing. And whereas we tend to give a form to the, because we have both form and formless, we have, right? Both. If I'm mistaken,
Yes.
am I right in that? Because Atyanta Bheda it is, right? One and all and all in one, or whatever. That means we
We'll
believe that
talk
both
about
form
that in a second.
Okay, sorry, Prabhuji. So this
No,
one I
it's
didn't
fine.
because we said about Krishna and then the effulgence, because some of them don't believe that Krishna is at the top mode. They believe he's an
Yes.
avatar. So that was my question. So I don't know whether you had any thoughts about that.
No, yeah, I mean, it is true. So, I mean, this is a whole another topic of debate, and in terms of the time here, we won't get too much into this detail here, like
No worries,
Bhagavatam.
Prabhuji. We can do that later. No worries.
We basically just in 1 minute, like we have the Bhagavatam talks about the Garbhadaksha Vishnu, and different Vishnus that are there, and Krishna in context with that. So that's a separate discussion with this. But this whole idea of where is the light emanating from and who's the source of it, that, and like especially people like, and sometimes people believe, oh, Shiva is the ultimate god or Krishna is the ultimate god. These are things, a lot of these times, like without reading the scriptures, some of these come from what is being practiced in someone's family also, right? And how it is coming down the pipeline with that, right? Or through their family parampara system also, right? So it becomes tricky with that. And yeah, so that Vatsala Mataji, is it okay? We can come back to your thought if it's related to
Sure,
this.
Prabhuji. Sure, no
Yeah.
problem.
Because in the interest of time, I would like to finish this part 3 and part 4, so we can
Sure.
definitely do the quiz and reflection next week. Yeah, I love the enthusiasm of this cohort. Yeah, so let's keep going. Now we have the 3 energies of the Lord. And Krishna has unlimited potencies, which can be divided into 3 main parts. These are the spiritual potency, the material potency, and the marginal potency, which is known as the living entities. Is that right? In other words, these are all potencies of God, internal, external, and marginal. But the internal potency is the Lord's personal energy and stands over the other 2. The original potency of Lord Vishnu is superior or spiritual, and the living entity actually belongs to that superior energy. But there's another energy called the material energy, and this third energy is full of ignorance. So let's keep moving, and then we here. This is a nice table that they've defined these energies. So Antaranga Shakti, Tathastha Shakti, and Bahiranga Shakti with that. So Antaranga Shakti is the internal potency, is that right? And so the direct shelter of the spiritual energy, that this is what we like this is in the spiritual world, what we call the Lord Superior, confidential, and intimate energy. The Tathastha Shakti is the marginal potency, or the which is manifested as the living entity with that. So, like, we all are the marginal potency, meaning that the way we are different, we are part and parcel of Krishna. So we have the same inherent qualities as Satchit Anand with that, as Krishna, that our soul is in order to remain happy in a blissful state, we should be serving Krishna with that, right? And so these qualities are coming from Krishna. That's why we say that we are the part and parcel of Krishna with that. And this is the marginal potency, right? So, and the third one is the Bahiranga Shakti, or the external potency, which is the material world. And so, as I mentioned earlier, like the elements that we see here, the earth, water, fire, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. These are the external potency with that. So three energies of the Lord with that, right? And so we interact with the as the marginal potency. With that, we interact with the external potency of the Lord in our day-to-day dealings, right? Interactions. So we are interacting with our environment around us with that, right? So earth, water, fire, air, and ether with that. And then we engage our mind, intelligence, and of course, if we're not doing things correctly, our false ego with that, right? We boost that. And so this living entity basically interacts with the so this living entity interacts with the material world with that, right, on a day-to-day basis with that, right? And so, but our goal should be that I mean, of course, we are engaging with the material world, but also we should be engaging the material world in the context of Krishna's internal potency, realizing that everything is governed by Krishna, and I am not the controller, and at the same time, um, engaging my mind and intelligence in Krishna's service with that, right? So we are then helping to align ourselves with the internal potency of Krishna with that, right? So we are sort of in between these two um, energies. So if you think about this as a circles, right? Concentric circles with that, right? So this is the external like the internal potency with that. Here we are in the middle as marginal potency, and then here is the external potency with that, right? And so we in the middle need to interact, like use this in the service of Krishna, use our mind intelligence and not generate false ego with that, right? This is a little tricky concept, but that's something that like we try to understand. All right, the next concept here is this Achinta Bheda Bheda Tattva, as Mataji was talking about with that. So the different limbs of the body cannot enjoy life independently. They must cooperate with the whole body and supply food to the stomach. With that, right? And so in so doing, all the different parts of the body enjoy equally in cooperation with the whole body. That is the philosophy of Achinta Bheda Bheda, simultaneous oneness and difference. The living entity cannot enjoy in opposition to the Supreme Lord. He has to dovetail his activities with the Lord by practicing Bhakti Yoga. So, what is this concept of simultaneous oneness and difference? So, as I mentioned earlier, we are part and parcel of Krishna with that, right? So, that means the elements, not the elements, the component, the qualities or characteristics that we have of Sat, Chit, and Anand with that, right? True happiness, blissfulness, that state of happiness, that is present in us as part of Krishna's limb, right? That we are limb of Krishna or part and parcel of Krishna with that, right? So we are oneness with that. That. But what is different is this drop, like it's explained here in the drop. And what is different is that we don't have that many, the quantity is basically different, right? Krishna has not only that these qualities, but has so many opulences with that, right? That like and those 64 qualities of Krishna with that and opulences that we talk about and the six opulences, we don't have those opulences. So even though we have simultaneous one with Krishna, yet we are different with that, right? So the analogy that typically people give here to explain this concept is, and this is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu actually gave, his philosophy, is this drop of ocean. So if you take the drop of water from the ocean, it has the same characteristic as the water itself, right? It is the H2O even in that water and water in the ocean also, it's H2O with that. But when you but the ocean is vast, right? The quantity is basically huge with that compared to a single drop then when we remove that from water. So even though we have the same Satchit Anand qualities, the um, vastness is different with that, right? Yeah. So the living entities are generated from the tathastha energy of the Lord, which we talked about the marginal potency, and thus they're always the energy of the Lord and not the energetic. That's right. So this is the main difference between like simultaneous and oneness and this philosophy. That right. There's actually, if somebody is interested, you should read more about this through the history of Sanatan Dharma, how basically it it happened, like the evolution, and why did Chaitanya Mahaprabhu come 500 years ago, and like before that, what was there, like Lord Buddha, and like before that Shankaracharya, all these philosophies and like these acharyas, they came with that, right? And the avatars of Krishna with that, right? How this philosophy and why this philosophy was given at that time with that, it is very interesting. So if somebody is interested, please go read those. And I think I should find some credible resources for that also. I would like to go back and review it. That way you understand why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came at that time. That's right. And what was the need of explaining this Achanta Bheda Bheda Tattva with that. Let me do some research, and in the next class or I will try to find something around that. Okay. Tathastas. Ha means position. Tata means is the point at the edge of the waves that roll up on the beach, the margin between water and land. Yeah. So this is a nice analogy that, like I was talking about the concentric circles. So this is showing that Tata is the point at the edge of the waves that roll up to the beach, the margin between water and land. So this one here, um, this is the one like end, and this is the other end, right? So this is the marginal, like this is what that middle portion is, the marginal energy with that. So that's what they're trying to explain here in this concept. Okay. Why is this important to know? You must take shelter of the internal energy, or you will remain in the shelter of the external energy. As we talked about, we need to align ourselves to take the shelter of the internal energy of Krishna with that. Okay, so this ends our part 3. Any questions so far on this? We have an interesting topic of Maya, part 4. What is Maya? Maya is the Sanskrit word for illusion and energy. And Maya is the cause of our illusion. There are two roles of illusion, Mahamaya and Yogamaya. Maya causes us to forget that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, with that, right? And so Mahamaya means we become illusion and forget Krishna as the Supreme in order to heighten and deepen our personal sense pleasure. And Yogamaya means we become illusioned and forget Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead in order to facilitate His pleasure with that, right? So there's a slight difference here, our pleasure versus His pleasure with that, right? So the classic example of the Yogamaya is when Kamsa was killing, right? The eighth son of Devaki, Yogamaya came, right? And basically, it was a girl because Krishna was already exchanged in Vrindavan, there, right? In, in Gokul. And so Nanda Baba and all that exchange had already happened. And then Yogamaya, in the Mahabharata and other episodes like we've seen and even read, it's like, okay, escapes from the hands of Devaki as Kamsa is killing. And Yogamaya tells Kamsa that you are foolish, that the one who wants to kill you who will kill you is already born with that, right? So Yogamaya basically creates this illusion. This happened like when the security guards in the prison, they fell asleep and everything became like nothing was happening there, right? Only Vasudev was able to take Krishna with that, right? So Yogamaya created this illusion and scene. And why did it create this scene or illusion? Was to provide pleasure to Krishna with that, right? And with that. And so for his pleasure with that, that's what this Yoga Maya is with that, right? But Mahamaya, on the other hand, basically, when we forget Krishna, we are eluded. If we're engaging in other activities than Krishna consciousness a lot of times for our personal sense pleasure, Mahamaya keeps feeding to that. It's like, oh yeah, you're doing good. Keep doing it. And again, it takes you away from um, engaging in Krishna conscious activities. Is that right? So there's a subtle balance of how we need to maintain with that. So Mahamaya, as I mentioned, influences our engagement in the material world, perpetuating the cycle of birth and death, leads us to believe in and seek out happiness through wealth, fame, beauty, sex, and power. Yogamaya means the mercy of the Supreme Lord, which connects a devotee in the transcendental loving services of the Lord, manages the supreme spiritual world, and by her partial expansion as Mahamaya, she manages the material world. So Yogamaya basically facilitates, because Krishna, of course, wants us to come back to him, right? And he wants, if somebody is doing Krishna conscious activities, especially initially, we definitely see that Yogamaya helps a lot, right? You are attracted to Krishna's names and the devotees, and you're engaging in your growth is very rapid with that, right? And that is what Yogamaya is helping us to connect to Krishna with that, right? And slowly and gradually your other vices and our other vices and generally like our other desires of engaging in material tasks starts reducing with that, right? With that we are attracted to hear more of Krishna Katha, do more kirtan with that, right? And so more chant more with that. So that is what Yoga Maya is helping us with that, because she's removing the barriers of the material energy, material world with that, right? But eventually, I think of course, Krishna is smart, right? And he wants to see, okay, now initially I gave you the taste, but how can you sustain this for a long time? Then Mahamaya comes, of course, like, okay, let's put some hurdles and barriers and see, can you sustain this for a while, right? With that. So there's this always and one of the ways the Maya, Yoga Maya and Mahamaya engage um, by either facilitating or adding hurdles in someone's life is through the modes of nature with that, right? The modes are the ones that are actually going to affect our consciousness, and they're like, oh no, I'm too tired to do this today, to this Krishna conscious activity. Okay, that is, you see how the mode of ignorance starts creeping in at that time, and then starts like detracting us away from doing Krishna conscious activities. So there's this subtle balance that we need to maintain. And that's when we were talking about that Shuddha Sattva, remaining in that helps with that, right? Any questions on this? I know this is a little tricky thing to understand with that, but this, any questions or any reflections on this concept?
Prabhu,
Yes, Mataji, go ahead.
this is a little difficult for me. I have to really think it, read it twice or thrice to, to deepen my understanding. I really have to go back and redo because I get confused sometimes.
Yeah, you are not alone. It is very confusing. Trust me, yeah. So yeah, please go ahead and read these purports also that are here. You can even listen to Srila Prabhupada's lecture here. But anybody else wants to add anything? Satyam Prabhu or Mamta Mataji, Puri Mataji, anyone? Purva Mataji. about this concept?
No, Prabhu. Sorry.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so basically it's this balance between Yoga Maya and Mahamaya, right? How we want to be engaging in Krishna's service and devotional service, and so Yoga Maya helps us to facilitate that. Mahamaya, on the other hand, basically adds those barriers because as we become more pleasurable in our like making our sense gratification at the epitome with that, trying to please our sense gratification, Mahamaya comes at that point with that, right? And so that's basically the nutshell of this.
Prabhu, can you give me solid example of Mahamaya? Because if you are going
Yes.
towards Krishna, then something is stopping us constantly.
Hmm.
Is that a Mahamaya?
Yes, yes, exactly. Okay, so let's think of some concrete example. I can give my example here. So when I was doing my PhD here in the US, I used to love watching college football, sports in general. You can just think about sports, right? And with that, and like I would waste my entire Saturday and a lot of Sundays sitting in front of the TV watching sports and that, right? With that. Okay, that is a very non-Krishna conscious activity, right? With that, as I came into Krishna consciousness, slowly and gradually, I mean, first of all, you have to chant, and then like you're engaging in deity worship and other activities, listening to Krishna Katha. These things started taking more and more and more time of my day, and gradually, this my love and desire to watch football and sports started reducing with that, right? And now. Um, it is still college football season going on with that, right? And so basically the I get happy. I'm like, okay, yeah, I can watch half an hour in on one Saturday. Like yesterday night, for example, I just watched, I came from the temple. I didn't even know who was playing, whatever. I looked on my phone. It's like, okay, yeah, these are the teams that are playing. I saw the scores. I got happy for this one who didn't win. And then half an hour I watched the TV and then I was done with that, right? Where previously I would have spent like 10 hours or 12 hours a day watching TV with them, right? Now, see, so this is what Yoga Maya and Mahamaya are trying to do, right? Facilitate with that. So you
Mm.
don't feel like the need for, like, this could also be, watching movies or anything with that, right? Yeah. Does that make sense, Mataji? Then?
Okay, yes, Prabhu.
Yeah. So that's the balance I think that we're talking about here. Is that right?
For Yoga Maya, give me only that Devaki, Krishna was changed from the womb of,
Mm-hmm.
Devaki to
Yeah.
Rosa.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is the only example we have, or we have some other examples
Well,
also.
so you can think of example in your life, right?
Mm.
So this is basically Yoga Maya is talking about means the mercy of the Supreme Lord, which connects a devotee in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So everything, so as I mentioned, when somebody joins the Krishna conscious movement with that, right? You see
Mm.
they are very enthusiastic. I'm sure it has happened to you also, and you must have seen it around you, right? In the
Yeah.
temple or other places with that, right? Why they are more happy or not happy, more eager to know more with that, right?
Mm.
That is through Yogamaya because Yogamaya wants the Krishna wants, right, us to learn about more about him, come back to him with that, right? And so how does he do that? He doesn't do it directly. He uses his uh, external potency. This is Mahamaya and Yogamaya, the external potencies, that right, of Krishna. And so he uses these potencies to facilitate that through that person because now he or she has they've started learning about it. The Yoga Maya starts creating opportunities where they will start getting devotee association. They start going to the temple. They start eating prasad with that. Gradually, that bond starts becoming stronger and stronger towards Krishna. That is Yoga Maya with that. Okay.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
that illusion of like moving away from the things that were providing happiness earlier by sense gratification, you start removing those or minimizing those and start increasing Krishna conscious activities. That's where this balance happens. So that it's on this balance beam, right? And we see in that seesaw, one goes higher, the other comes down. With that, so that initially Mahamaya is high. As people start getting into Krishna consciousness, Mahamaya starts coming lower, Yoga Maya starts coming higher to help this person get more into Krishna consciousness. But when this person is in Krishna consciousness, of course, Krishna wants to test us and say, okay, you think you're really doing good, let me start bringing some barriers. So Mahamaya come up also with that, and Yoga Maya goes down at that time again with that, right? Now you have to increase your effort to become Krishna conscious and show more seriousness in Krishna consciousness. So this goes up again with that, right? So it's a constant thing that's happening, and these Mahamayas are controlling this through the modes of material nature with that. Okay.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you.
Yes, Purva Mataji, go ahead.
I read one more example for Mahamayas that Yashoda Maya saw the entire universe in Krishna's mouth.
Yes.
And she realizes, and then with Mahamaya's illusion, she forgets that Krishna is Krishna, and it's
Yes.
just her baby to facilitate the Leela of Krishna. So
Krishna,
that's one of the
exactly.
examples.
Yep. Perfect. Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So, in which direction should we move? I think we already talked about that. When we focus our energy on serving Krishna, we're under the influence of Yoga Maya. Yoga Maya brings us closer in intimacy with Krishna, right? When we focus our energy on the material or for our sense gratification, we are under the influence of Mahamaya. Mahamaya separates us from Krishna with that, right? So, in which direction should we move? Prabhupada talks about here that Arjuna, when he was thinking in terms of his personal sense gratification, he was under Mahamaya. And when he agreed to execute the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then he is under Yoga Maya with that, right? So Yoga Maya gave him the understanding that Krishna is telling that do this as part of service, do your prescribed duty as part of service to me. Then he understood that, oh, it's not for me. I have to fight this war. It is because of the pleasure of the Lord as service to Him. I have to do this, that. Okay, I think we all know this, how we escape the clutches of Mahamaya. We already talked about the modes of material nature, how that affects us and how we need to eat the right kind of food, offer bhoga, all the things that we typically do in Krishna consciousness. That we are told to do are the activities that we should be doing to remove ourselves or escape ourselves from the clutches of Mahamaya with that. Devotional service unto a bona fide representative is the only way to release such clutches. So service to your guru, most important thing with that, right? And that helps us move away from the clutches of Mahamaya, right? Think instead of going for a movie, okay, yeah, I can go for a movie, but okay, if I'm doing it a lot of it, it's like, okay, can I do something else? Can I go for book distribution or something else? I can help in my temple with something, right? With that. So these are some examples there. So you can please read this. I think we've generally talked about this. I think this is the last part here. Let's quickly finish this also. Reincarnation and transmigration of the soul. These are from chapter 2 in Bhagavad Gita. These verses, these shlokas, the main definitions are reincarnation, the incarnation or embodiment of a soul in a new body after it has left the old one at physical death. And transmigration is the passing of souls from one body to another at death. That, right? And so, as we already talked about this, soul cannot be destroyed, right? Nayanam Chindanti Vastrani Nayanam Dahati Pavaka, that verse from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2. So, but it can move from one body to another body with that, and that is the transmigration. And then this, when the soul takes up a new body, it is called the reincarnation with that. The four principles of material existence, birth, death, old age, and disease, are miseries that cannot be escaped. One who has taken birth is sure to die with that, and after death, one is sure to take birth again with that. So this is unavoidable, and one should not lament on this. This Krishna is talking to Arjuna about this, right? The living entity's fear of death is due to his false ego of identifying with the body. Everyone is afraid of death. Actually, there is no death for the spirit soul, but due to our absorption in the identification of body as self, the fear of death develops. That whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail. That right? So the classic example of this that we've heard in Bhagavatam, I believe is in Canto 3. It's dear Maharaj. How can I blank on that name now? Who remembers that name? He takes up, he's attached to a deer and he takes care of the deer. Anybody remembers? Oh boy. Let's go on. That is very bad of me. How can I forget that? It is in chapter Canto 3, Srimad Bhagavatam. Right?
It's Maharaja Bharata.
Yes. Yeah. Bharat Maharaj. Thank you. So, yeah, so the story of Maharaj Bharat is that he is attracted to a deer and he starts taking care of the deer. He basically saves the deer, right? And then as he is, and then starts gradually developing the love of for the deer, and eventually he's very much attached. And at the time of death, he's thinking about the deer. So in this next life, he becomes a deer itself, himself with that, right? And then he realizes this, he gets this consciousness that, oh, what a foolish thing I did, that I was so engrossed with this deer that I was attracted, and so I was thinking about it, and then I could not, you know, focus my attention to the focus my attention towards the Lord's names at the time of death with that, right? So this is at in chapter 8, Krishna is talking about whatever we remember at the time of death, we acquire that body in the next lifetime with that, right? Given up the bodily conception with that, right? So again, we're not the body, we are the spirit soul. I think we have talked about this in earlier sections with that. Life after life is perpetuated by desire with that, right? And so whatever we think at that point, we get that, and the concept of the karma, we also talked about this last time, that how the fruits of our actions, it starts from a bija, halon mukha, right? Remember that part, and how that helps us to go to the next life with that, right? And so human form is the only form of life which people can get this sort of have this intelligence and self-realization that the life is meant or is there for surrendering ourselves to Krishna with that, right? And so our goal is not to get entangled in this birth and cycle, death with that, but over time gets liberated from this and go back to Krishna in Golok Vrindavan with that. Yeah, I think these are some of the things. So this is the confidential part of the knowledge, simply knowing that the spirit soul is different from this body. That. Okay, I think we have concluded this chapter, this long module. I'm going to give them some feedback that if they can, split this module into, we initially it was all one big module, and then we tried to split it. But now even there, I feel it is quite dense, right? This module, I'll see if we can do something about it. But anyways, next week we will do the knowledge check. This is the questions, the quiz, and then we have the reflection questions also for this. There are, I believe, quite a few in this because this module has a lot of concepts. Yeah. So one, I will send one. I know I talked about 4.18 last time, which one who sees in action is intelligent among men, and he is in the transcendental position, although engaged in all sorts of activities. I struggled with this concept, this verse, and I was looking for resources, and I loved Chaitanya Charan Prabhu's website here. So I'm going to share this link in the group. Before next time, please read this and come. This will help us to understand this concept and break it down into even more simpler understanding of this very complex topic of Bhagavad Gita of karma. That right? Any final thoughts or questions before we conclude today's session?
I was looking at 418 also, Prabhu, then I was having little problem there. I have to reread it.
I know, that's why I was looking for that. I thought it is not only me, but other people might also face this challenge because it is complicated, right? Yeah, so, but Chaitanya Charan Prabhu gives very good explanation. I'll share this link in the group, so please read it, before you come next time,
Okay.
All right, everyone. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for joining and hope this was useful, Bhaktin Apurva, for you, Apurva Mataji.
Yeah.
Please continue joining next time as well. And let's pay our obeisances to each other before we close out. Panchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Have a blissful and happy Krishna conscious Sunday and the rest of your couple weeks before I see you again. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.